Here's something pretty surprising to start us off. Early analysis suggests that maybe 1 in 10 political podcast episodes could have false information.
Wow, 1 in 10.
Yeah. Let's unpack that because audio content is just exploding. Podcasts, obviously, but also those voice notes people send around. Figuring out what's actually true is getting, well, seriously tricky.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, isn't it?
It is.
It's really interesting to think about this boom in audio, especially alongside the discussions fact-checkers were having at the Global Fact 9 Summit. They're grappling with this exact problem.
How do you keep things accurate when there's just so much audio out there?
Exactly.
So for you listening, this deep dive should hopefully shed some light on why it's getting harder to, just believe everything you hear.
And we'll also look at what's being done, the efforts to try and ensure some accuracy.
Right. And to do that, we've gathered quite a bit of material. We've got insights from fact-checkers via Kinzen, some arguments about AI in creative fields from Aoki Studio.
Practical steps for checking AI content from TechTarget, advice for authors using AI from the Authors Guild.
AI's role in podcasting from Headliner, a Reddit thread on AI risks, even Google's experiments with AI-generated podcasts.
Plus, insights on AI transparency from HubSpot, a creative industry view from 3D Issue, and some core fact-checking principles from the American Journalism Handbook. It's quite a mix.
It is. So our goal today really is to untangle all these complexities around verifying audio, especially now that AI is getting so involved in making and spreading this stuff.
Okay, let's jump in. Where do we start?
Well, one of the first sort of big hurdles that fact-checkers kept bringing up is just how incredibly time-consuming it is to check audio.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the basic challenge is just that audio is different from text or images, right? Like Doreen Wynot from PesaCheck said, you have to pinpoint the exact moment something untrue is said.
Exactly, the exact minute or second.
Which means listening, a lot of listening. You can't just skim it or search for keywords easily.
No. And she gave this really powerful example, didn't she? About a radio interview clip in Kenya.
Oh, yeah, with a presidential aspirant.
That's the one. A tiny clip was taken way out of context, totally twisted the meaning. And to actually verify it, they had to sit and listen to the entire hour-long original broadcast.
An hour just to check one short clip? That's a huge time sink.
It really is. It's not a quick job at all.
And that raises this efficiency question. Even if you manage to get a transcript, which takes time itself.
Right. Transcription isn't always fast or perfect.
Andres Jimenez from Meldita pointed out that even then, finding the false claims within that transcript is still slow, still manual.
He actually admitted they definitely miss misinformation in longer podcasts sometimes.
Just because they don't have the hours.
Exactly. Imagine listening for hours, hoping to catch maybe one misleading statement in a 3-hour show. It's a massive bottleneck.
It really highlights the difficulty, especially with longer audio formats.
Yeah. And it's not just the listening time, is it? It's also about the tools, or maybe the lack of them.
Right. Compared to verifying text or images, the toolset for audio just seems much more limited.
That's what Simon Moulou from PesaCheck found. He mentioned having to use these kinds of workarounds, like using YouTube's transcribe feature or Google Translate for viral voice notes.
Which can work sometimes, but they have their issues.
Definitely. He talked about accuracy problems, right, with language detection.
Yeah, the example where Google thought Malagasy was French.
Right.
It shows these automated tools, they still struggle, especially with less common languages or maybe different dialects. Makes verification even tougher.
And Jimenez also really hit on this need for better tech. He mentioned that during a crisis, like the situation in Ukraine.
When the information flow is overwhelming.
The time needed just to listen to audio made it almost impossible to keep up. He's really hoping for some kind of tech solution to help them manage the time crunch.
You can see why. That example he gave about the manipulated audio in the Andalusia election.
Oh, yeah, the candidate targeted with the fake audio.
Yeah. Debunking that meant finding and piecing together bits from an old, 40-minute interview. That sounds incredibly painstaking.
Like putting together a really difficult jigsaw puzzle, but with audio clips.
Exactly. Which kind of leads us straight into the next big challenge. Just the sheer volume of audio content out there now.
Oh, absolutely. The podcast boom during the pandemic was huge. And it just keeps growing, doesn't it?
It seems so. Andrea Arnold from Verificat shared this statistic. Something like half the population in Spain listens to podcasts now.
Half the population. That's massive.
So you've got this huge growing audience, but the systems for actually reviewing all that content for misinformation, they just haven't kept pace.
Not at all. I mean, platforms like Spotify or Clubhouse, they might clarify their guidelines.
Sure, they put rules out there.
But actually enforcing those rules across millions of hours of audio, that's a whole different ballgame. It feels almost impossible at that scale.
Like trying to moderate the entire internet. It's incredibly difficult.
Which is why those focused efforts, like the Verificat and Kinzen partnership you mentioned,
Right. Fact-checking climate change misinformation in Spanish podcasts.
those become really important. It's a way to tackle a piece of the problem, at least.
Targeting specific areas, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's another hurdle fact-checkers mentioned related to the platforms.
Ah, the cooperation issue? Or lack thereof.
Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm.
A real desire for more openness, more transparency from the platforms hosting all this audio.
Jimenez mentioned that, didn't he? Wishing he just knew what platforms were already doing behind the scenes to tackle misinformation.
Right, because without that transparency, fact-checkers are kind of working in the dark.
And Arnold brought up another transparency issue, figuring out which podcasts to even focus on.
Because the audience data isn't public.
Exactly. You can guess based on social media followers, maybe, but that's not very accurate.
And the reliable data often costs money, which isn't ideal for nonprofits or fact-checking groups.
So they can't easily prioritize the podcasts that are actually reaching the most people, the ones with potentially the biggest impact. It really hampers their ability to focus their efforts effectively.
Definitely a major challenge.
Okay, so just as fact checkers are trying to deal with all the time, the tools, the volume, the platform issues, along comes AI.
Right. Artificial intelligence entering the chat, you could say.
And it's not just hypothetical. AI is actively being used more and more to create content, including audio content, which adds a whole new set of complications.
This brings us nicely to those arguments from the AOCAT Studio article, the one sort of pushing back against using AI uncritically in creative fields. They had a lot of concerns.
They really did. A big theme that jumped out at me was about emotional depth.
Ah, yeah. The idea that AI art might lack real feeling.
Exactly. Because AI doesn't have human experiences, love, loss, joy, struggle. The art it makes might be technically perfect, maybe, but miss that kind of core emotional connection we get from human artists.
Like a technically brilliant musician who doesn't seem to feel the music.
Yeah, something like that. It could feel a bit sterile.
Mm-hmm. Art often comes from such a personal place, doesn't it? Driven by human feelings, senses. The worry is AI just can't replicate that authentically.
Another point they made, which I thought was interesting, was how AI blurs the lines. Who's the creator? Who's the consumer?
Right. If anyone can prompt an AI to make something, who gets the credit? The coder, the AI, the prompter.
It makes things like authorship and artistic intent really ambiguous.
And it raises questions about how we value human skill, too. If AI can churn out art easily, does that devalue the years someone spent honing their craft?
That's a big concern. And they also touched on kids learning art.
Oh, the cognitive loss idea.
Yeah, if kids just rely on AI instead of, actually drawing or painting or sculpting themselves.
They might miss out on developing motor skills, problem solving, expressing themselves through that messy process.
Exactly. The struggle is part of the learning, isn't it? AI could potentially short-circuit that.
It's an interesting point. They also warned about this potential closed-loop system.
Explain that a bit.
Well, if AI mainly learns from art that already exists and then just kind of remixes or replicates styles based on that data.
We might just get more of the same. Less truly original stuff.
Potentially, yeah. And maybe less value placed on unique human skills. It ties into the idea that AI might not take big creative risks.
Because it's trained on the past, not on imagining something radically new.
Exactly. It might optimize for what's known, leading to maybe a less adventurous art world.
And then there's the cultural context issue.
Yeah. AI doesn't inherently understand culture or history.
So the art it creates might lack those deeper layers of meaning, the nuances that come from understanding a specific time or place or tradition, like you said, trying to get a local joke without the local knowledge.
Right. So much art is deeply embedded in its context. AI might produce something that looks right, but feels shallow.
The sheer quantity AI can produce was another worry.
The potential for oversupply devaluing art.
Yeah. If AI can just flood the market with images or music or whatever, does it make each piece feel less special, less valuable? Basic supply and demand, I guess.
When something's too easy to get, perception changes.
Definitely. And they also mentioned the social aspect of art creation.
Losing those human connections.
Right. Collaborating with other artists, learning from mentors, engaging with an audience, AI could potentially lead to a more isolated creative process.
That social fabric around art is really important, isn't it? For sharing ideas, building community.
It really is, and a really fundamental point they raised. AI doesn't have morals or ethics.
It can't judge right from wrong or true from false.
So there's a real concern it could generate content that's harmful, offensive, biased, or just plain wrong without any understanding of the impact.
That lack of judgment is a pretty significant risk, especially when you think about potential misuse.
They also touched on other things like potentially losing cultural heritage if AI dominates.
Art becoming more homogenized because AI models might draw on similar data.
Art losing some of its mystery because AI is more predictable.
It paints a picture of art potentially becoming detached from human experience, doesn't it?
It does. And they kept going. AI lacking resilience born from struggle, struggling with subtlety, the risk of AI being too perfect.
Too perfect. How so?
While liking those little human imperfections that often make art feel authentic and relatable.
Ah, interesting. The perfectly imperfect idea.
Yeah. And the negative psychological impact on human artists feeling replaced or devalued.
These are tough questions about what we value in art and creativity.
The list was really comprehensive. Worries about tech monopolies controlling art, cultural expression getting diluted, AI's limits on true innovation, replacing the process of human creation.
Art being devalued by AI's speed, AI influencing aesthetic taste based on programming.
Ethical issues of ownership and authenticity, the risk of AI being used for manipulation, less human collaboration.
Hindering skill development, devaluing arts education, amplifying bias, making art too uniform.
The lack of real artistic intent behind AI creations. And ultimately, the big fear. The dehumanization of art itself.
Wow, it's a heavy list, a real call to think critically about where this technology might take us, beyond just the cool factor.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder that these tools bring huge questions with them.
So, okay, given all that, and the fact that AI is being used to create content, including audio, how do we actually fact-check this stuff?
Right. How do you verify something made by an algorithm? This is where that Tech Target article comes in handy. It offers some practical steps.
And it sounds like the approach is, well, kind of applying traditional fact-checking principles.
Pretty much, yeah. The first step they mention is basic. Research the key points. Just because AI said it doesn't make it true. You still need to separate fact from fiction.
Which echoes the Authors Guild warning, right? That you just can't rely on generative AI for factual accuracy currently.
Exactly. AI is built to generate plausible text, not necessarily truthful text. Big difference.
Okay, so research is step one. What's next?
Step 2 is trying to identify the original sources. Where did the AI get this information?
Which must be tricky with AI, given it's trained on, like, massive data sets.
Super tricky, but still important to try and trace claims back if you can. Adds another layer of complexity to the audio challenge we already talked about.
Okay, step 3.
Compare the AI output to credible sources. Standard fact-checking, basically. Cross-reference against trusted news outlets, academic research, expert knowledge.
Makes sense. Checking against known truths.
Then step 4. Look for inconsistencies or things that just don't make sense. Illogical statements. AI can sound coherent but still trip up on logic or facts.
Gotcha. Be skeptical, look for red flags.
Step 5 is considering the context. Just like with human stuff, information taken out of context can be misleading, even if the individual facts are sort of right.
Context is always key.
And finally, step 6, proofread. AI makes mistakes. Spelling, grammar, weird phrasing. It still needs a human eye.
So even the basics matter. It's not infallible tech.
Not at all. Tech Target basically says, if creators and consumers follow these steps, we can all get better at judging the credibility of AI content.
It gives us a starting point, a framework at least, for navigating this new landscape.
Definitely. Now, shifting gears slightly, what about the people using AI to create? Like authors. The Authors Guild had some specific advice for them.
Yeah, and the focus there seems to be on ethical use and maintaining the author's own voice, right?
Exactly. The core idea is use AI as an assistant, maybe for brainstorming or editing, but not as the primary writer.
Keep the human creativity central.
Right. They strongly recommend rewriting any AI-generated text in your own style, your own voice, to really make it yours. Maintain that authorship.
Which makes sense for maintaining your unique style and connection with readers.
And transparency is huge here, too. The Guild says be upfront with publishers and readers if you've used AI significantly for text, characters, plot points.
Disclosure again? Seems to be a recurring theme. It's about trust.
Absolutely. And respecting other writers' rights, don't use AI to mimic someone else's style harmfully. Plus, there are potential legal issues there anyway.
Avoiding plagiarism, respecting intellectual property.
And circling back to accuracy, thoroughly fact check everything the AI generates. It's not reliable yet. And watch out for biases it might introduce.
That human oversight and critical review is non-negotiable.
They also suggest supporting other creative professionals like voice actors, translators who are also dealing with AI's impact, a sense of solidarity.
That's a nice touch. Thinking about the broader ecosystem.
And practically, they stress talking to agents and publishers about AI use, especially because AI-generated stuff generally can't be copyrighted.
Ah, the copyright issue, that's a big one.
It's huge. And they mentioned Amazon KDP now requires authors to disclose AI-generated content.
So platforms are starting to mandate transparency.
Seems like it. They also touched on trickier things, like training AI on your own writing, but still advise disclosure. And using AI tools trained on properly licensed data for things like translation or cover art.
So basically,
Mhm.
use it as a tool, keep control, be honest, be ethical, and check everything.
That sums it up well. It's a good ethical checklist for authors venturing into AI.
Okay, so let's zoom in on podcasting specifically. How is AI being used there? The headliner article tackled this.
Right. And it's not all negative. There are definitely workflow benefits they highlighted.
Like transcription.
Yeah, huge improvements there. AI tools like Eddy, Rev, Descript are getting faster and more accurate at transcribing audio and even creating video captions. Saves podcasters tons of time.
And accurate transcripts are so useful for accessibility, for repurposing content.
Definitely. AI also helps with the busy work, like generating show notes or social media snippets automatically.
Freeing up creators to focus on the actual content, the creative side.
Exactly. And in editing, AI can help clean things up, remove filler words like reduce background noise, even suggest edits for better flow. Tools like Aphonic, Adobe Podcast do this.
Making post-production potentially much quicker and easier.
So definite upsides on the production side. But headliners also stressed the ethical side, just like the Authors Guild.
Transparency being key again.
Top of the list. Tell your audience how you're using AI. Don't pretend AI-generated segments are purely human. Build that trust.
And maintaining quality control.
Crucial. Just because AI generated it doesn't mean it meets your standards or fits your show's voice. The podcaster is still ultimately responsible for the final product. Human oversight is essential.
So AI is a powerful tool for podcasters, but responsibility comes with it. Use it ethically, maintain quality, be transparent.
That's the message. It's about finding that balance.
Which brings us back to that broader theme of ethics, like the Reddit thread, ethics in AI, the risks of AI.
Yeah, well, that was more general. It really captured that societal unease around AI-generated media questions of perception, trust, authenticity. It underlines why these ethical discussions are so important everywhere, including audio.
Definitely. And that Google Notebook LM experiment with AI-generated podcast summaries is such a concrete example in the audio space.
It really is. What struck you about that one?
Well, the irony mentioned AI voices talking about human connection.
Right. It feels a bit off, unsettling.
And the author calling the experience freaky. It captures that strangeness of hearing AI generate seemingly human speech and the immediate jump to the SPJ ethics code about transparency.
Yes. Be upfront with your audience if it's not a human speaking or writing. It feels fundamental.
Absolutely. And it also surfaced those big unanswered legal questions.
Like, who's liable if an AI podcast summary gets something wrong? If it includes misinformation? Is it Google, the user who prompted it?
We don't really have clear answers yet, do we? That's a legal gray area that needs figuring out as this tech spreads.
For sure. And the reactions from the journalism faculty were interesting too. Some impressed, some not.
Right. Some found it realistic, but others, like Nanette Sosa, picked up on the unnatural interaction, that robotic back and forth that doesn't feel like real conversation.
It shows AI still struggles with the nuances, the flow, the subtle cues of human dialogue.
And the potential future developments, they mentioned paying for different voices, maybe even cloning your own voice, and editing the AI scripts. That opens up even more possibilities, but also more ethical quandaries. Imagine deepfake audio becoming easy to make.
Scary implications for trust in reality.
Exactly. Which makes the final piece we looked at, the HubSpot article on AI transparency, feel incredibly important as we wrap up.
Totally. We keep coming back to transparency. What did HubSpot define it as?
Basically making AI systems understandable, opening up the black docs so humans can interpret how they work and why they make certain decisions.
And why is that so crucial, especially for content creators?
Well, firstly, for trust. If your audience or collaborators understand how AI is being used, they're more likely to trust the output. Secondly, to catch and avoid bias.
Like that example of the biased AI screening job applicant.
Exactly. If you don't understand how the AI is making decisions, you might unknowingly perpetuate harmful biases embedded in its training data or logic. Transparency helps expose that.
So how do you actually achieve transparency? HubSpot had steps, right?
Yes, 6 main ones. First, define your goals for using AI and make sure they align with your values. Put ethics first.
Build it in from the start. Makes sense.
Second, choose the right methods for transparency. Maybe explaining the AI's reasoning, providing clear documentation, setting up feedback loops. It depends on the AI and the context.
Okay, tailor the approach.
Third, prioritize transparency throughout the AI's entire life cycle, from gathering data to building it, deploying it, and monitoring it. It's an ongoing thing.
Not just a one-off check.
Right. Fourth, get different perspectives involved: data scientists, the people using the AI, managers, ethicists. A broader view helps ensure responsibility.
Avoid groupthink. Get diverse input.
Fifth, foster a culture of transparency in your organization. Make openness and accountability the norm when dealing with AI.
Lead by example.
And they mentioned best practices like ethical data collection too. Ultimately, HubSpot stresses that AI transparency isn't a destination, it's a continuous process.
An ongoing commitment.
Okay. So it's about building trust, ensuring fairness, and just generally understanding these powerful tools better.
Right. So let's try and pull this all together. We've seen fact-checking audio is tough, it's slow, lacks good tools, faces a massive amount of content, and sometimes platforms don't help much.
Then AI comes along, making content creation easier but verification much harder, raising all sorts of ethical red flags about creativity, truth, and bias.
And the key responses seem to be: apply rigorous fact-checking principles, even to AI. Use AI ethically and responsibly if you're a creator. And above all, be transparent.
Transparency and critical thinking seem essential for everyone: creators, platforms, and us, the audience, especially as AI gets better at mimicking human audio.
Which leads us to a final thought, maybe a question for you listening. As AI keeps getting better, creating audio that sounds incredibly real, how are you going to change how you listen? How will you figure out what's true?
Yeah, and what responsibility do creators and platforms have to help us navigate that? It's something we'll all need to grapple with.
Definitely food for thought. We really encourage you to keep exploring these themes: media literacy, critical thinking about what you hear and read, and the ethics of AI. It's a constantly evolving landscape.